There is a brand new dramedy on Apple TV Plus called Palm Royale. It is based on a 2018 novel called Mr. and Mrs. American Pie by Juliet McDaniel. This one stars Kristen Wiig, Ricky Martin, Josh Lucas, Leslie Bibb, Laura Dern, Allison Janney, Carol freaking Burnett. It's got a fantastic cast. It's a period piece. And it has these tones of Saltburn, The Talented Mr. Ripley, not as dark, but it follows a similar theme. So Kristen Wiig plays Maxine Simmons, and we don't know much about her except that she's something of a con woman. She pretends to be at a higher station in life than she actually is, and she's trying to make her way up the social food chain. And the first step of that process is becoming a member of the prestigious Palm Royale, this exclusive club in Palm Beach. The first episode opens and introduces us to this character and also the stories that she's spinning about herself. As the episode unfolds, things you thought were lies end up not being lies, and then things you figure were truths end up being lies. And it's the same with every other character. It's one of these soap opera-esque shows where everyone has a secret and it's leading to some thrilling, mysterious fiasco.
I think what really makes it work is Kristen Wiig as the lead, as Maxine Simmons or Delacorte. I think that her portrayal of the character could have easily fallen on the wrong side, right? It could have been cloying, it could have been too dastardly, it could have been too conniving, it could have been too manipulative. But yet with Kristen Wiig, it's none of those things. She comes off as a gosh darn it, too sweet girl from Outback, and just trying to be her best, darn it kind of thing. And none of it feels fake. It works for Kristen Wiig as Maxine. It works when she's trying to break into this club. But you can see why she wants to do it. And I think that's important.
So I went into this show completely blind. I haven't read the book. I knew very little about the series except from what I saw in the trailer.
You mean you're watching a show like the rest of us plebs?
I am.
Wow,
indeed.
Look at that.
I knew nothing about it, my friend. I think there wasn't a single moment in that opening episode where I wasn't surprised. Because I thought I knew where it was going.
Yes.
When it opens, I'm like, oh, I've seen shows like this before. I know characters like this. Is that what's happening here? It must be. And then at every turn, something interesting happens, something new happens that completely subverted my expectations. I have to say, after the first episode, I was completely hooked and I had to click play on the next and then the next.
Yeah.
And I found it very, very compelling. I mean, in no small part, you mentioned Kristen Wiig and she is absolutely fantastic, but in no small part, thanks to Laura Dern and Allison Janney and even Leslie Bibb, all of the women in this are playing it up and they're doing such a great job. Like there is this, I think soap opera vibe is the best way to describe it. There is that gossipy, bitchy, high society feel.
Yeah.
That for some reason, despite the fact that you should absolutely hate them, is incredibly compelling.
For the most part, I think you hate everybody except maybe Laura Dern. But even then, in episode 3, you also see where she can also have her own highfalutin thing. Like, I'm glad I'm an outsider watching it and I'm not like actually in there because I don't want any part of that. But it's so entertaining to watch. For me, there's that one bit where I think it's in the trailer. Leslie Bibb is at Grayman's, I think, where they all go and get their fashion, their dresses and their frocks and their clothes. And Leslie Bibb's character asks the proprietor of the store what Allison Janney's character is wearing, and he goes, sleeves. And the way Leslie Bibb breaks down in laughter, I just love her. Like, I love just the absolute guffawness of just that laugh. It's such a breakout laugh. And it's quite interesting that the way the episodes are written, because each episode almost has a focus character. Like, I think the first one feels very much like, let's learn about Kristen Wiig's Maxine. Second episode is, oh, here's Maxine with Leslie Bibbs Dinah. And then episode 3 is, oh, here's Kristen Wiig with Ricky Martin's Robert. He isn't in a lot of it in the first 2 episodes, but he really comes through on the third, I think. That is a really interesting way to treat an ensemble cast.
For me, one of the most interesting things about the show goes back to why we like these sorts of characters. So Kristen Wiig's Maxine, yet again, feels like someone who, if you knew in real life, you would avoid her like the plague. You would not want to be her friend because she is this conniving social climber. And also, not just a conniving social climber like the other women at the Palm Royale, but a conniving social climber who is willing to do dastardly things to get what she wants. And she should be unlikable. And so there are 2 things I think that make this series work really well. With something like The Talented Mr. Ripley, you admire Ripley, but you don't necessarily like him because he is the villain of the piece. With Saltburn as well, Barry Keoghan's character is incredibly unlikable, despite them doing very similar things. The genius of Palm Royale, number 1, is casting Kristen Wiig, who I think is an incredibly likable human being. And so that goes a long way to making you relate to the character. And the second thing might be the gee shucks approach of that character. And maybe that does a lot to undercut some of the bad things that she's doing.
You're comparing her to Ripley, and it just feels like...
But even from the first episode, she is stealing stuff from a woman in a coma, dude. That's not,
Yes, not cool, but it's not a stranger. I'm not disagreeing with you, but she's not breaking into old people's houses and stealing their underwear.
Right.
She's stealing frocks from her husband's comatose aunt.
I don't know if that makes it better, man. Maybe on a scale of dastardly things.
Yeah, that's what I mean, right? Because
I think it's very difficult to make characters like this likable. I think
Yes.
there's a very thin line, and it's easy to slip into dislike and annoyance. And for me, that's how I felt about Saltburn and Barry Keoghan's character. And a lot of the people, even in The White Lotus, for example, because the whole Eat the Rich plot can go either way. But I think with what they've done in Palm Royale, Kristen Wiig does feel like a surrogate for the rest of us plebs. We should be able to relate to her character, at least the mass audience who watch this. I'm sure there are some elite assholes who are watching this going, Alison Janney's my hero. But
Yeah.
for the rest of us, I think making Kristen Wiig relatable is the most important thing about the series, and they pull it off incredibly well.
like the writing's fantastic, but being able to pull that off is a Kristen Wiig thing. And I think that's the only way this could have worked.
I have to say, she's also playing against type. We've seen Kristen Wiig do the straight up comedy stuff for a long time. We've seen her do the SNL stuff for a long time. And I think this is really something of a breakout role because, yes, she's being comedic, but the dramatic chops are really required to pull this thing off.
You know what's also interesting? This is a better use of her dramatic chops than Wonder Woman 1984 was. Like, that one tried way too hard to make Kristen Wiig a villain without using any of her built-in charm. I was excited to see Kristen Wiig in Wonder Woman because she was going to play a villain, and it looked like she was going to be like a misunderstood villain who was confused and finally given powers for the first time because she's always been an ignored person and all that. But it never did it. It never was able to use Kristen Wiig in the right way to get us to like or even care about that character.
And I think all of that kind of works towards the overall tone of Palm Royale as well, which is not particularly straightforward. Like, the tone of the series is an interesting one because it's not a drama, it's not a comedy, it's got these weird, quirky elements to it, but yet all of it it reminds me a little bit of Hello Tomorrow. Not in the futuristic sci-fi way, but the tone of the humor and the drama. It has a very throwback vibe to it. And not just because it's a period piece. Can I also say, I think Ricky Martin's absolutely fantastic. I didn't know what to expect when I saw his name in the credits, and I wasn't sure if it was just a glorified cameo or whether he was playing a very, very small part, but he is acting it up.
I don't know why he's not in more TV. He's a fantastic actor. I don't know why he's not doing more. Like, his turn in the Gianni Versace series was fantastic.
That was amazing.
And you know what it is? I find it very interesting that his turn is very serious. He hasn't come out to do comedy where he's the cute guy, right? He's come out to do really fucking heavy stuff. And I really, really like that.
I think that's a choice, and I think it's something that he does very, very well. I have to say, in this, what struck me the most is the subtlety in his performance. And I think the Gianni Versace thing was a great example of what he's capable of. But this is a completely different role. And I think it shows a great amount of range in what Ricky Martin can actually do as an actor.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm really enjoying the show. I know right out of the gate, the show had mixed reviews. I think some critics haven't been so keen on this. But for me, this is the kind of series that reminds me of the things I loved best about shows like Desperate Housewives, for example. When it was the biggest thing on television, this series kind of taps into those same tendencies. And I know a lot of it feels very telenovela, but it's elevated telenovela.
Yeah.
And there's a reason telenovelas do so well and last as long as they do. I think they tap into some innate nature within us as human beings that we love this kind of soapy drama. And the ones that do it well really, really pull it off. And Palm Royale feels like a great elevated telenovela.
It's doing a drama series, pulling in influences from the telenovela, right? Because there are tropes of telenovelas that it doesn't do, obviously. But you're right, there is enough I wouldn't say tongue in cheek, but in the general vicinity of the cheek, because I'm never quite sure if they're being serious. Like that third episode, there's a bit with Laura Dern where she's talking about being left at the altar and how it relates to South Vietnam and North Vietnam. I'm like, are you being serious right now? Or are you just being delusional? I like it. I like the show.
I also am a big fan of the historical setting because it's set in 1969, and 1969 was a big year for America. There were a lot of things going on.
Shit
was about to go down. Neil Armstrong walking on the moon. The Vietnam War is going on. Civil rights, feminist rights, gay rights. All of this stuff is happening.
Woodstock's just around the corner.
And Palm Royale takes it on and addresses it, despite it being in the background. It shows how all of these things kind of influence the lives of everyone around. Despite being a campy show about a social climber, there is enough social commentary here to make it a very, very smart comedy. Go watch Palm Royale. The first 3 episodes are available to watch on Apple TV+. Let us know what you think once you've seen it. Goggler MY, all of our social media feeds. You can also email us on podcast@goggler.my or send us a WhatsApp on the Goggler hotline, 012-524-5208. Thank you so much for listening. This is the Goggler Podcast.